The most expensive Medicare mistakes don't happen at 65. They happen at 64 when nobody's paying attention yet. Miss this window and you could face a $5,000 surgery bill, a surprise payment hike from one income year, or lose your one shot at a supplement plan without health questions. I've spent 7 years helping thousands of people all across the US from these decisions, and the same handful of things trip people up every time. So let's look at them together. 3 checks to run at 64. Your employer coverage, your income, and your plan path. And the one timing move that makes all 3 actually work. Let's take a look. First check, are you still working at 64? And if you are, how many people work at your company? Most people have never been asked that, but the answer to that question can drive your whole decision around what you do next. Medicare versus employer coverage. Here's an example. A 64-year-old woman called me recently. Her employer pays 100% of her monthly payment for her work coverage. Sweet deal. So of course, she wanted to keep that deal and push off Medicare until she retired. Then I asked, well, how many people work at your company? 5. And that changed everything, right? Because here's the deal. If your employer has fewer than 20 employees, then Medicare becomes the plan that pays first, and the employer plan pays after that. That means you need and have to have both Medicare A and B. If you skip B, you got a big hole in your coverage. Plus, you get a late enrollment penalty for life. She didn't know any of that. She thought, well, having employer coverage meant she could leave Medicare alone until she retired. The only reason I caught it was because she called me early enough. Hold on to that. The timing is the whole game, and I'll come back to it. Now, if your employer has 20 employees or more, it's different. You typically delay Part B if you want to without penalty, but only while you're actively working there. Retiree coverage and COBRA don't count. But here's where people accidentally waste a lot of money. Just because you can delay Part B doesn't mean you should. Here's an example. Joe called me after watching one of my videos. He had a surgery coming up and was planning to keep his employer coverage, about $200 a month at work, because on the surface of it, that looked cheaper than Medicare. But when we dug into the plan, it had a $1,500 deductible and a $5,000 max out of pocket. So going into that surgery, he was probably looking at eating the full $5,000. Now, when we compared that to original Medicare with a supplement plan, the monthly payment was a little higher, around $325, but his expected out-of-pocket for the procedure was basically the $283 Medicare deductible. And no network and no prior authorization requirements that could get in the way of what he and his doctor were wanting to get done. The supplement doesn't have those. So $283 versus $5,000 with less friction. He made the switch. He saved thousands of dollars on that surgery, and he ended up with a better plan than he started with. He jokes with me now that he owes me dinner. I'll take it one day. But Janice, same age, still working, looking at the same basic decision. Had another number we need to look at, her income. And that's the second check most people skip. Janice had sold a property, a family property she'd owned, and between that and her salary, her income landed her higher than usual. And here's what most people don't know. Medicare looks back 2 years at your income to decide what you'll pay now. So your payment in 2026 isn't based on what you make in 2026. It's based on your tax return from 2024. For most people, Part B is $202.90 a month. But once your income crosses a line, $109,000 if you're single, $218,000 if you're married, filing jointly, then you pay more. It's called IRMA, Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. And it can raise both your Medicare Part B and your drug coverage for a full year. And here's the part that feels flat out unfair. You can do everything right, sell a house you've owned for 30 years, do a Roth conversion, have one strong year at work, and 2 years later, Medicare looks back and sees that income from 2 years ago and says, you owe something more for your Medicare. You did everything right, you just didn't know about this rule. And you followed the rules you knew about, right? And then got hit by a rule nobody told you was coming. I don't think that's fair, but that's the way it is. Now, there is an appeal, an opportunity in certain situations to appeal. So you can reach out to me if you want more information on the appeal option. For Janice, the property was already sold. She didn't qualify for an appeal. We weren't going to undo that income, but we could make sure she knew what was coming. So that extra Medicare cost that starts 2 years from now wouldn't catch her off guard. And that's important. Her decision wasn't just about which plan she wanted at 65. It was about this year's income and what it would do to her at 66. That's the kind of thing you want to catch at 64, not get blindsided by at 66, right? Employer coverage and income tell you about your timing and your costs. But the third check is what you're actually buying. And there are two main paths that you can choose from. One is original Medicare with a supplement plan. This is a plan that covers most of what Medicare doesn't. Plus, you add a Part D to that. Path 2 is Medicare Advantage plan. This is a private insurance that bundles everything together and runs through a network. Now, this is a fork in the road. You don't get to mix and match. And I'm not going to tell you which one is right for everyone because there isn't one, right? What I'll tell you is what actually matters about each one so you can make a good choice. If you go supplement route, here's the single biggest thing to understand. Right now at 65, the insurance company has to take you. They can't ask you a single health question. I call it your golden ticket of immunity. It doesn't matter what your health looks like. They have to say yes. And that's about the most valuable thing you'll ever get in Medicare. But that window doesn't stay open forever. And once it closes, in most states, you'll have to health qualify, pass a medical background check just to get a supplement then. So if you go Advantage route, here's what matters most there. It runs through a network, has more prior authorization requirements, which means more hoops to get things approved that you might want done. The trade-off, though, is it's usually cheaper, and it includes some nice perks like dental, vision, hearing, gym membership that a supplement plan doesn't. Now, here are the things to consider when looking at Advantage. Are your doctors in network? Is your hospital in network? Are your prescriptions covered well? What do the copays look like for the bigger ticket items like hospitalization, cancer, the annual medical deductible? And what's the most you could pay in a really bad year, called the max out of pocket? The answers to those decide whether the plan fits or it's a problem waiting to happen. And this needs to happen at 64, when enough time is actually there to do the homework. The point isn't which path I'd pick for you. It's that you walk through into 65 already knowing which one fits your doctors, your drugs, your budget, and your comfort level, instead of guessing under pressure. And the biggest detail underneath it all is timing. It quietly decides whether any of it works. So here's the timing move I promised you. Start about 6 months before you turn 65. Your enrollment window for Medicare A and B opens 3 months before you're 65, but you don't want to wait until then to start. 6 months out gives us time to check your employer size, see which coverage pays first, look at the income, see if anything's going to be bad about your prescriptions that we need to catch, right? Compare supplement plan companies, G versus N, whether your employer coverage is even worth keeping at all, right? All of that calmly before the clock forces us into anything. And remember the woman with the 5-employee company? Because she called early, we caught the Part B problem while there was still time to fix it. If she kept delaying and let her enrollment window pass, she'd have been left with a hole in her coverage and a penalty she'd pay for life. And remember, that golden ticket of the supplement side, the window where they can't ask any health questions, that's a window you're racing to, right? Start early, and you get to use these with purpose and with the right plan lined up. Wait, and you're making the biggest decision of your retirement in a scramble. That's the real reason to do this with someone instead of alone. Not because Medicare is impossible, it's not, but because the right answer depends on details most people don't know to check or how to check. I've had clients go through serious things since we set up their coverage. Surgeries, hospital stays, cancer, of course. And the line that I hear back almost always the same: I didn't have to pay a thing. That's not luck. That's a decision they made at 64, before the clock forced their hand. Which brings up the part most people get wrong next. Knowing when to act is only half of it. The other half is knowing what you'd actually choose, which plan, which path for your own situation. I made a whole video on exactly that. If I were turning 65 right now, here's the plan I'd pick myself and for my own family. It's right here. Watch that next.